Hey, drop a comment and let me know what country or city you're tuning in from. Ever been in a situation that made you question humanity's decency? I'd love to hear your wild stories. Let me tell you about my personal run-in with what I can only describe as suburban warfare, fueled by pettiness and just the right amount of satisfaction. I'm Mark, and today, I'm about to own up to something truly devious. You might even call it artful. It all began in the kind of neighborhood that could only exist in a satirical comedy, a so-called master-planned community where perfection is mandatory. Imagine everything, down to the color of your mailbox, was regulated. Lawns had to be trimmed precisely to the inch, and if your hedges dared to grow beyond a certain limit, you'd have a very unhappy neighbor knocking at your door. I'm an easygoing guy. I enjoy cooking on the grill, watching old action films, and sometimes fiddling around with gadgets and gizmos. We'll just call them power projects. But there was one thing about my property that stood out like a sore thumb: my power setup. For convenience, I had an external power unit right on the edge of my property, and, of course, it was positioned just close enough to the sidewalk for easy access. That's when she came into the picture, Sandra. Sandra wasn't just your typical neighbor. No, she was the epitome of everything one might expect from a neighborhood watch enthusiast. Dressed in her signature neon workout gear, always sporting a designer dog bag, Sandra carried herself with a distinct air of entitlement. I'm talking about someone who thought the world revolved around her, and anyone with a pulse was merely an obstacle. Her complaints were relentless. If my grass grew a tad too high, she'd make it a point to let me know. If she could hear the faintest guitar riff from my music while I worked in the garden, she'd be at my door within minutes, claiming noise pollution. Even my carefully curated recycling bins were too unsightly for her liking. But then, Sandra took it a step further. One night, she did something so bold, I couldn't just let it slide. See, Sandra had recently acquired one of those fancy electric cars, one of those high-tech models you can barely pronounce. Unfortunately, her driveway lacked a suitable charging station, and instead of figuring it out like a normal person, Sandra decided to help herself to my power. I caught her, or rather, her little act of sneaky thievery, late one evening. She was out there, in the dark, holding this absurdly long extension cord like she was on a secret mission. At first, I wasn't sure. Was it a mistake? Maybe she just needed a quick charge, right? But when I reviewed my security footage, the truth became clear. She'd been charging her electric car using my electricity for hours, night after night. I could have gone a typical route and complained to the community association. But where's the fun in that? No, this called for a bit of imagination, and let's say an eye for payback. Here's the thing. This wasn't just about the stolen power. It was the audacity, the nerve. Years of passive-aggressive comments, side-eye glares, and snide remarks had built up inside me. So, I decided to channel that frustration into something creative. I spent the next few days in my garage, tinkering away on my solution. With a good dose of caffeine and a lot of scheming, I had a plan. My wife, bless her heart, didn't say much but gave me the occasional amused look. She didn't necessarily approve of my methods, but deep down, she was enjoying this little game of revenge. The plan? Well, let's just say Sandra's car wouldn't be going anywhere the next time she tried to plug in. I rigged up a system that would deliver a small, but very satisfying, jolt to her car's charging port. Just enough to render her electric vehicle useless for a while, but not enough to do any lasting harm. The beauty of it? It would be untraceable. No one would ever know who had sent that charge surging through her system, except for me, of course. And when Sandra walked across the street the next morning, with her little dog peeking out from her handbag, completely unaware of the trap waiting for her, I couldn't help but feel a small surge of pride. She plugged in her car, smiling smugly, as if nothing could touch her. But inside I was grinning. This was the moment I've been waiting for. The perfect, silent victory. I watched her frustration unfold from the comfort of my living room, sipping on some lukewarm tea as she tried and failed to get her car to charge. Honestly, I couldn't remember the last time I felt so lighthearted, kind of like how I felt when I finally got approval to put up a little treehouse in my backyard, despite all the HOA complaints. And just like that, the scales were tipped. Sandra had no idea what hit her, and I Well, I had my quiet, sweet revenge. The following morning, I was jolted awake by a noise so piercing it could have been a banshee wailing in distress. I peered through the blinds and saw Emily, yes, that Emily, from across the street, a sight to behold. Her usual vibrant pink workout gear was now a chaotic mess, and she was pacing frantically around her electric car. Her face was as red as a lobster, and her tiny dog was yipping alongside her, no doubt mirroring its owner's distress. I couldn't catch all of her words, but the frantic gestures were enough to paint a clear picture. She was yelling at someone on the phone, probably trying to get Tesla's customer service to help her fix the unfixable. I saw her stomp her foot, throw her hands in the air, and, this part was truly satisfying, kick the tire of her precious vehicle in frustration. Sounds like she's having a rough start to her day, my wife said, walking in and stifling a laugh. I took a long sip of coffee and shrugged, savoring the moment. Oh, just another Monday, I muttered under my breath. The moment felt like poetic justice in action, served cold, with a side of petty satisfaction. And oh, how glorious the aftermath was. Emily, deprived of her sleek electric chariot, was forced to climb into her gas-guzzling SUV. I couldn't help but imagine her carbon footprint doubling with every grocery trip. As she revved up her engine, the sheer hypocrisy of it all was almost too much to bear. The best part? She had no clue who had orchestrated her downfall. For the next few days, she was on a rampage, accusing the power company of sabotage, interrogating neighbors, and even suggesting that the local squirrels had developed a taste for expensive charging cables. The paranoia was palpable. Meanwhile, I played the role of the concerned neighbor. I offered my sympathies and gently suggested that she file a police report just to stoke the flames of her frustration. The cherry on top? Her Tesla was eventually towed away for repairs, and she was left to stew in the aftermath of her electric misfortune. Now, I fully expected some kind of retaliation. I figured she'd be plotting her revenge, likely wrapped in a fury of pink fabric and righteous indignation. But strangely enough, Emily stayed subdued. She still gave me the occasional glare, but the HOA complaints? They ceased to materialize. Her usual passive-aggressive notes stopped appearing, and I even caught her staring at my external power outlet once or twice with a mix of suspicion and, dare I say it, respect. It was almost as if she had finally come to recognize the power of petty genius when it stared her in the face. And that, my friends, was the ultimate win. Of course, no act of revenge ever goes completely unpunished. A few weeks later, I received an official letter from the HOA. It seemed my external power outlet had violated community guidelines. Apparently, it was unsightly and potentially hazardous. They gave me 30 days to move it or face a fine. I knew exactly who was behind it. Emily, of course. She never outright accused me of zapping her precious Tesla, but it was crystal clear she had used her HOA connections to retaliate in the only way she knew how, through bureaucratic pettiness. I didn't need proof. I knew. So what did I do? I moved the outlet, naturally, but not to a less obvious spot. Oh no, I placed it in an even more visible location, right in her line of sight. And just to be extra petty, I painted it Pepto-Bismol pink and added a bold sign that read, Emily's Courtesy Charging Station, coming soon in the most obnoxious font I could find. The look on her face when she saw it? Priceless. Outrage. Confusion. But also begrudging respect. Deep down, she knew she had met her match. A man just as petty, just as vindictive, and just as determined to escalate things to ridiculous levels. The war? Oh, it's not over, of course. I'm sure Emily's already plotting her next move. But for now, I'm content to bask in the sweet glow of my small victory. Who knows? Maybe one day, we'll even become friends. After all, we have so much in common. An unhealthy obsession with passive-aggressive behavior, a love of petty payback, and a shared appreciation for the utter absurdity of suburban life. So what's the moral of the story? Don't mess with a man and his power tools, or his garden gnome collection. And definitely don't steal his electricity, because you'll never know what kind of electrifying surprises he's got up his sleeve. And Emily, if you happen to read this, I offer you my sincerest, not really, well wishes. May your electric car never run out of charge again, and may your pink workout outfit forever be fabulous. As for me, I'm firing up the grill, cracking open a cold one, and enjoying the sweet taste of victory. Maybe I'll even start working on a new invention, something even more diabolical. Perhaps something that will finally get Emily's chihuahua to wear a diaper. Because in the suburbs, the war never ends. It just evolves, and sometimes it gets a little electrified. Now, if you'll excuse me, the HOA is probably on their way to complain about the noise from my grill. This story is just one of many, and trust me, it won't be the last.